definitely how close the teachers are with the students. Like the example I gave earlier of, grabbing, early breakfast with your teachers is not something you see commonly. Or, Thursday evening at like 8 p.m. you have a private, you gather with your friends and your teacher is there teaching you a few days before the exam. So that's not something you feel. So I think the community sense of it is a pretty small school. So by nature, it has a more community feel to it.
I'm Glenn Herbert, and I'm an editor with Our Kids. We're speaking with insiders from Canada's leading private schools to gain insights into their programs, culture, traditions, and leadership. This includes insights from parents, alumni, and administrators. This is the Our Kids Insider Perspective.
So believe it or not, I'm still quite friendly with, the principal, some of the teachers. I still keep in touch with. They actually reached me out on Instagram to tell me about the interview. So you can tell the level of connection we had in high school. I think that's something that kind of not a lot of people tend to focus on. But I was so close with my teachers that I'm still friendly with them even to this day, almost 10 years later. And I think that has a pretty significant impact on a young kid that wants to, especially in a new country that's kind of trying to navigate the new world. They were like my close friends at a point, and they helped me a lot. So I do owe them a lot of. I'm pretty thankful for them because they had a pretty significant impact in terms of the direction that my life ended up heading towards. So I think that's the best memory I would have. I had a lot of close friends because especially I stayed in a dormitory too. So I had a lot of strong, good close friends, but the impact of a teacher, I think, is pretty, it's a lifelong impact. So I think that's the biggest takeaway personally for me. So I think to fairly answer that question, you would have to kind of have more experience with other private high schools. So, my answer will be, I think, pretty biased since I've only experienced Nile Academy. But, I did go to a public school prior to that, and I kind of know the difference between like the public and private life. So perhaps I could touch more about that. I think it's just more of a close-knit, small community. Everybody knows everybody. Every teacher is quite, well experienced one-on-one with the students. You tend to kind of feel like a number in like a public high school where you're just like one in a class of 30 to 35. My class at Nile when I was there, I think was like 10 or something. So that's pretty significant. That's a huge change coming from a public school and jumping into a class of 10 where the teacher knows you personally. So I think that's pretty important. So definitely caring, because I think that's the whole thing about them anyways. They're pretty involved in terms of getting you to where you want to go. So I would say caring, and I would say they're pretty involved as well. Because I remember even a few times where we would go to, I forget the name of the bagel shop, but we would have like study sessions before exams, and our like math teacher would be giving us like would tutor us at night. And I remember like grabbing pizzas and grabbing like bagels at night or early in the morning, and that's not a pretty common experience for a high school student, I would say. So I think they're pretty involved, they're pretty caring, they're pretty genuine people. I think genuine too. That's a good one. When the teacher is almost like your friend, it doesn't feel like the traditional student to teacher experience. When the teacher is more like your family and more like your friend, it kind of has a more genuine feel to it. So you kind of tend to get more involved, even as a student, as someone that's like not too crazy about chemistry, for example. When you personally know the teacher and the teacher is like personally involved in your learning and is pretty dedicated in terms of coming to help you out when you're struggling, that kind of just gives off a more genuine vibe than, you know, a typical experience, I would say. So I think most of the students, or perhaps the families as well, were more leaning towards STEM fields. I think that's the one common thing about the school. It's definitely more of a STEM oriented school. If you're into like crazy crazy like recreational activities, or something that's not in the traditional science, tech, engineering, math fields, probably I would say Nile isn't the school for you. Because I remember even like the families are definitely, everyone's pushing towards, going into the STEM fields. The students themselves were all like, ask anybody in grade 12, they're like, oh yeah, I want to do engineering, I want to do this, I want to do science, biology, life sciences. So yeah, I think that was the one common thing that I remember from the general population of the school. Yeah, I think the biggest one would be probably the importance of education. I think the school is just like both the administration, from the teachers, staff, to the families too. I think the one thing they definitely share in common is the importance of education. And I can give you an example for that. Like when I was doing my university applications, I got accepted to a number of universities, and the one thing, being the lazy student that you are, you're like, oh, maybe I should go to kind of an easier university, or not push myself too much. But I remember like meeting again and again with the counselor teachers, and even several of the other teachers that weren't directly my counselors, and they would always be pushing me towards, hey, like, why don't you aim for the best one? Like, you got accepted to the best school, go to the best school. That's how I ended up going to U of T, and that's how I ended up choosing neuroscience over several other fields that I applied for. So I think the importance of education is the one thing they just drill down on, and they're pretty adamant on that. So I think that's the general vibe of the school. Definitely how close the teachers are with the students. Like the example I gave earlier of grabbing early breakfast with your teachers is not something you see commonly. Or Thursday evening at like 8 p.m. you have a private you gather with your friends, and your teacher is there teaching you a few days before the exam. So that's not something you feel. So I think the community sense of it is a pretty small school, so by nature it has a more community feel to it. But just the how the teachers are, and how I think the whole administration is, it has an extra kick of community feel to it than the general small community would. I grew up like I was mentioning, as a first generation immigrant, not really knowing the ropes of a new country, and I've definitely faced the challenges of that. Even up to this day as a medical student. So I think the one thing that I genuinely did take away from my high school experience was being able to give back. I've been involved in some level of mentorship and volunteering and tutoring from even early on in high school. I used to go to summer school camps, and I was a science teacher there. And then during university, I had a lot of volunteering experiences centered around mentorship, and guidance. And even to this day, I mentor a bunch of pre-medical students that wanted to go into medical school. So I think the sense of guidance and mentorship is the one big thing I took away. And I think the one common extracurricular activity that's been consistently on my CV from high school, university to medical school is just some level of mentorship that I've been involved in. And I think that I definitely learned that from my teachers there at Nile. So I think I'm kind of an odd example because, I was kind of a nerdy kid anyways. I wasn't too crazy about, the school lacking a big pool or a big gym or stuff like that. So that wasn't, a big issue for me personally. But I know, especially given the public schools in Canada are pretty, they're quite nice schools. I think they're definitely adequate, enough to provide you with a variety of options. So I think the one thing that Nile would lack is kind of the diversity in terms of, if you're the type of student that's kind of not too sure about what they want to do and kind of experience different fields, and kind of find yourself and explore yourself, perhaps Nile wouldn't be the best suited school. I say that because it is a more STEM oriented school. So I think it's more geared towards families and children that are kind of already have established an interest in like the STEM fields. You know, they probably wouldn't like this answer, but that's probably the truth. I think it has stayed pretty consistent over the years. I wouldn't say it evolved much. As I was leaving, I was quite happy with my education. 10 years down the road, I look back, I'm pretty happy and satisfied. So it hasn't really evolved in the sense that, it hasn't changed much over the years. It's been consistent in the sense that I'm proud that I went there. I'm pretty happy with the education that I got. I think it definitely, I'm almost on medical school, so I'm almost at where I want to be and what I want to be doing. So it helped me get there. So I'm pretty thankful for that. I think the school has definitely gotten much bigger over the years since I think it has several campuses now. I'm not too sure. I'm not too closely following, but I think it has evolved. So some of the perhaps negatives that I touch on may or may not be true at the time. To anybody that's listening to this, I would definitely encourage them to go check it out or maybe go visit in person, because 10 years is a long time, and I'm not too sure how they improved since then, but I'm sure they have. I think if it's okay, I'll just revolve it around like one main theme instead. Going to university, especially in Canada, the jump from high school to university is quite significant in terms of the workload, the atmosphere. High school is kind of laid back. You don't have a lot of, it's probably even more laid back now. You don't have a lot of homework. You kind of can get by doing, not a lot of study. That changes significantly in university. And because of that, I think a lot of people tend to struggle in first and second year. Because the school is so oriented about, education and studying and, the academics, generally speaking, it does a pretty darn good job of preparing those students to be pretty ready for university. I pretty much, because I had such a consistent study schedule, with probably the help, we had some, as I was saying, we had some like study sessions with the teachers themselves present at our dormitory at like 7, 8 p.m. So that culture of studying and that culture of like being pretty dedicated to your education is something that definitely benefits you when you're early on in the university years. So I think that's the one big thing, one general theme that I genuinely did like. I would say go and meet with the teachers, because they're pretty involved in your child's education. I mean, you should do this with any school, but it's really hard to kind of appreciate that aspect of the school without going and seeing yourself. So go visit, drop by, speak with the administration, speak with the teachers, and perhaps sit down and have a general conversation about with the student too, obviously, because it's their life, and what they want to do and what their dreams and aspirations are. And if that aligns with the school, I think they definitely would be the people to get you there. So I think if the goals of the students and if their interests are somewhat clear, I think they should definitely go and check out the school to see if they click, essentially. I would say, because it's generally a younger school, I don't remember when it was established, but it's a pretty like a younger school, a smaller school. I don't think it's going to have all the amenities and things that a more established school going back 50, 60, 70 years would have. So I think if you have that, if you kind of understand that going in, you'll be less disappointed about the fact that they don't have the biggest gym or like the best equipment or stuff like that. Because I remember some of my high school friends, they would complain about that a lot. And, I kind of knew that going in. And I wasn't too interested anyway, so it didn't matter for me. But I think having that understanding and being real about the shortcomings of the school, I think is generally a good advice for anybody, to not upset yourself. But I think in terms of, so yeah, I think just having that understanding would probably benefit you.
For more information about this school, you can visit their profile at ourkids.net.